Hi everyone, this is Brian Hayes and welcome to episode 16 of the Win with Music podcast. Today we're asking the question of making a living as a jazz musician. My special guest comes from New York City, Ricky Alexander, a wonderful jazz clarinetist and saxophonist, living the dream, performing in the home of jazz, New York. Hi, Ricky, and welcome to the Win with Music podcast. Fantastic to have you here today, all the way from New York City, as my special guest.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so excited to chat.
The topic for today's podcast is one that's close to your heart, and it's how to make a living as a jazz musician. Can you tell us a bit about the reality of life? It's 2026 when we're recording this. Tell us a little bit about what's involved in your case, being a professional performing jazz musician, I guess in the home of jazz, New York.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll start off by saying that I think it's pretty rare, and there's only a few places you can live, in my experience, in the world and just perform. I think there has to be a bit of a built-in tourism, and you have to have the right people to play with. And I think a lot of people that go to school, they're sold kind of a dream of that you can be a full-time performing musician, when in reality you're gonna have to juggle a lot of different hats, and maybe teach, and maybe travel, and maybe move. I'm one of the lucky ones that I can scrape together enough gigs through the week to make an okay living. And play basically exclusively old time jazz, and play clarinet and sax, and I would say it takes I'm in a precarious place where I'm a band leader for part of the time, and I'm also a sideman, and I do a lot of sideman. So for example, today I went into a recording studio and played on some pop horn track, just for a couple of tracks.
Okay.
And then, I turn around, and tonight the cocktail bar pays $100 each. It's not a huge amount of money, but if we're lucky, we'll sell some records and get some tips. And then there's much better gigs around the corner as well. So between all of that, I'm able to make a decent living.
So I guess you are a freelance musician, but you specialise in, I know your band's called the Early Bird Jazz Band, so I guess that's music from the 1920s, is it? Primarily that New Orleans era of jazz?
Yeah, so when I lead a band, it's anywhere from the 20s into the 50s. I really like, early stuff. Like, my favorite clarinet players are Omer Simeon and Johnny Dodds. And I get into swing stuff. I love Johnny Hodges. I love even Stan Getz into the 50s. And so, when I lead a band, we'll play jazz clubs and tour and go, and focus on our albums. And sometimes we'll play corporate events and weddings, and that's another way to get a decent amount of money.
Yeah. So is there anything like income security in New York? I mean, is it a unionised town? Are you guaranteed a minimum wage, or is it just survival of the fittest?
That's a good question. If you had asked me that like a couple of years ago, I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" But I went to Paris last year, and stopped through and played some gigs, and I got to chat with all of the musicians there, and I realized they're getting like a subsidy from the government to play a certain amount of gigs per month, and it changed the scene dramatically. It seems like in Paris, people will play 4 times a month and do it very purposefully, and have like a proper show, and the audience is very excited to have that. Meanwhile, in New York City, there's a saxophone on every street corner, just playing for like tips, and it's you really have to it's kind of like a brutal free market capitalism. You got to just play as much as you can, And there's not really a safety net other than the standard social safety net of, healthcare and for low income people like that. But there's nothing like Paris in New York City.
No, that's interesting, isn't it? Like the home of jazz, it's a pretty hard road still by the sound of it there. Look, finally, you specialise mainly in clarinet. I know you also play the saxophone. Is it sort of a 50-50 split, or are you more or less a full-time clarinet player?
Yeah, my first instrument is alto sax, and I'll be honest with you. I do feel the most comfortable on saxophone. The clarinet is a much harder instrument. I mean, I think you might
Yeah,
agree with me as a woodwind
absolutely.
player.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just tougher. You got to cover the holes all the way. There's no octave key. It's a
No.
register key, so you got to learn twice as many notes. So
Mm.
I really enjoy playing the clarinet, and I started getting serious about it in college. And the music that I love features the clarinet a lot. So I'm playing it, every night of the week. Um, but I still do feel more comfortable on sax, and I really love playing both.
If there was a young student, and you touched on it at the start, but it really loves jazz, and it can be anywhere in the world. If there is a secret to developing a performing career in jazz, have you got any tips? I know it's a hard road, but have you got anything you could share with our listeners as to, from your experience, some guideposts to successfully traverse that road?
Absolutely, yeah. And I didn't mean to sound pessimistic at the beginning of the episode. I think that we're actually living in kind of a golden resurgence of bands in cities all over the world. So and I think that one of the things that enables this is being somewhat active on social media and making the connections that you need to make. You can learn from people all over the world. You can share your enthusiasm. Um, and I think, for somebody who's young, I would say start a band, get your friends together, find like-minded people, and encourage each other and grow something yourself. Because I've seen that happen all over the world where bands, there's plenty of people who are decent musicians in every town, but if you can cultivate and foster an interest in a specific type of music as a group, then you can go really far.
Fantastic advice. Thanks again, Ricky, for being part of the podcast. It's wonderful to talk to someone actually living the life of a performing jazz musician.
Oh, I'm so happy to share. Thank you so much, Brian.
We'll close out today's episode having a look and a listen to Ricky lead his Early Bird Jazz Quartet, playing a classic from the 1920s, Way Down Yonder in New Orleans. Until next time, bring music into your life and you'll win with music every day.